So yesterday, somebody said, Mr. Williams, I love these groups. And I hope that we can keep these groups going during the school year. Then another student said, what inspired you to use hip hop when working with students in school? And so we all have stories. You have a story. I have a story. All of you have heard my story during the assembly. And so on today, I'm going to start by sharing the story of how these groups got started. And so in 2010, I graduated from Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, where I studied to become a school psychologist. When I started working in schools, I noticed something that was fascinating. Black kids, white kids, Asian kids, Hispanic kids, students across race, across class, across gender, they all embraced hip hop. Because of my fascination with my students' love of hip hop, I often went to the cafeteria where students beat on tables. Where rappers recited lyrics to those beats. Because of my fascination with my students' love of hip hop, I stood in the hallways where I watched students sprint from class to class with earbuds dangling from their ears and headphones glued to their heads. Because of my fascination with my students' love of hip hop, I often went to the gym where students beat on bleachers and dancers danced to those beats in very rhythmic ways. Because of my fascination with my students' love of hip hop, I interviewed students to understand their love of hip hop. I wanted to understand what students experienced when they listened to hip hop. What students experienced when they danced, when they sang, when they created beats. I was interested in their experiences. From interviewing students, I learned that they listened to music because it motivated them throughout the day. Students explained that they listened to music to distract themselves from negative, stressful thoughts. Others explained that they listened to music to get them through the day. These were the things that I found fascinating. But I also found something that was disturbing. I found that although my students embraced hip hop, there were no opportunities for them to use hip hop to build self-confidence. There were no opportunities for them to use hip hop to develop self-management skills, to become self-aware, to use hip hop to develop social awareness. There were no opportunities for them to address stress and trauma using music, using dance, using rap, using poetry. So I began to wonder, what if students were able to meet as a small group to use dance, to use song, to use rap, to use poetry, to learn skills that would lead to success? What if students were able to use hip hop to develop self-management skills, to become self-aware, to become socially aware, to learn how to maintain and develop relationships? What if students had structured spaces where they could dance, sing, rap, recite poetry to relieve stress and to deal with trauma? What if teachers created spaces where students could critique the very music that students listen to identify if their favorite rappers promote social justice or if their favorite rappers promote violence?
I told you to stop playing me. Hey, bro, Roger got to fight, bro. If they doing, I'll beat him up, and I don't know if they gonna get revenge or what, bro. I'm scared. I need you to come up. Let's pull up. Come on.
All right.
Alright.
Oh, no, that's my bro. You alright?
Oh, look at that shit.
You did it for me, too.
What if teachers created spaces where students could determine if their favorite rappers promote peace? Or if they speak negatively about certain groups, including women, people of color, and people who have different sexual preferences. Based on these thoughts, I began to collaborate with students to create engaging hip-hop groups. Students felt that it was their space to share, their space to be themselves, their space to process stress, their space to process trauma. We use hip-hop to build self-confidence, to learn how to manage emotions. The only rule to join the group was that students had to embrace hip-hop. So all students who were a part of the group had at least one thing in common: the love of hip-hop. Although listening to hip-hop was the only requirement, some students rapped, some danced, some sang, some created poetry, some created beats, and some did a combination of them all. So over the past years, I have received a tremendous amount of phone calls and emails from teachers, from psychologists, from social workers, administrators, and community leaders who have all said the same thing. They said, "Dwayne, I love what you are doing, but how do I do it? I love the idea of using hip-hop to boost self-confidence, to increase self-management skills, to increase self-awareness. I love the idea, but where do I start?" From the feedback that I received from teachers across the country, I wrote a curriculum that provides a step-by-step approach to creating hip-hop groups. And so from creating these groups, students across race, students across class, students across gender, black kids, Hispanic kids, Asian kids now have spaces where they can use rap, where they can recite lyrics, where they can recite poetry, where they can sing, where they can dance, where they can express themselves using hip-hop. These groups have changed lives. They've inspired students. They've encouraged students to do more. So here's my question for you. How can we create these groups in your school?